Hello everyone, yes it is I, the Sillywiz, back again for some more Battletech analysis, and this time, or carrying on in the series looking at the development of the Battletech meta. And last time we looked at where it started, the game itself. We looked at how people communicated, which was generally in those days through good old magazines. And we looked at a couple of I spoilt the top 8 and the 10th placed most highly regarded or commended by Wizards of the Coast deck. And I spoiled all the decks from the 97 World Championship. And we looked at a bit of the history, and the winner, Peter Sundholm, played the day before and got absolutely wiped by a deck from Shu Yikao. And we looked at the origins of those particular decks. So that's where we are. And what I want to focus on in this section is how this works. Because a lot of people don't understand it. And I kind of explained that you've got a load of one-cost units here. You've got your Mongoose. Let's just pull this out so it's nice and big for people to see, and maybe just pull that in. You've got your Mongoose at 1 cost, you've got your Whitworth at 1 cost. So if you're always a resource spare, you can put that out. You have a 2-cost Jägermech, a 2-cost Hatchet Man, and a 2-cost Centurion. And then on top of that, you have 3-cost Wolfhounds. There's only 4 of them in there. But the idea here with this many units, because you've got 6 Wolfhounds, 6 Mongooses, 6 Jägermech, 6 Hatchesman, 6 Centurion, then that's 5 lots of 6, that's 30 plus another 4 Wolfhounds, is that you are able to develop a board presence incredibly quickly, because everything costs so much. And okay, they don't do a lot of damage on their own. 1 cost for the Whitworth, straight 2 on the Mongoose. The Whitworth has an overheat 2+2, which means effectively you can get 3 damage out of it for 1, which is great value. And also one of those damage points bounces off the armour, and that's quite important, as we'll see in a minute or two. The Jägermech does 3, it's slightly more fragile at 1/5, but you can alpha it for another 1. The Hatchet Man overheats for an additional 1. It's a 1/6/2. It does 2 damage with jump. The Centurion you can alpha strike for 2 more on top of the base 2, which means you can get 4 out of it. And the Wolfhound overheats for another 2+1. Again, you can get 4 out of that. And what we will show, or what we will look at in a moment or two, and excuse me a second, because that is the good old delivery man. So let me just put something up. Nothing like good old Amazon to brighten your day with a delivery and interrupt and annoy you with the same delivery. Oh, and I'm not supposed to be showing bare knuckles. I have no idea where that came from. So, so Yik's deck, small mechs, chuck them out. And that was the only one of its type. Okay, the other decks, as we saw, we had Peter Sundholm's Wolf deck, very fast. Probably not actually the best deck there, but we'll look at that again, because let's face it, after Worlds this got published in one of the magazines and everyone was trying to buy it, buy all the cards for it, and Fenris A went through the roof in price, and everyone actually realised after that actually it's nowhere near as good as it is, or it sounds, and whatever else. But the other options, and you can see them in here, well, we'll do the other deck. Terry Bora's Bearer deck. Terry, good player, awful deck. He will admit it. He did admit it. Don't try this unless you want a kitchen sink and a bit of fun. But when you look at the others, when you look at Rick Bird was a wolf player, you can see a similar theme here. But when we look at Ralph Anderson, it's a similar style of deck. Mongooses, Wolfhound, Centurions. This is slightly bigger, but you've got Kai in there, which is the star of the Champions. Here's Jim Keeley's, which is basically the same. They ran a very... Oh, is that right? Is that right? No, Mike Fitzgerald ran a very similar style deck. And then at the end, you've got Barry's, and again, this is starting to see the swarm elements. The very cheap Wyvern, Hatchet Man, Mongoose, Kintaro, the Exterminator, which is actually pretty good value for 3. If it didn't have that 1M, it would be in every deck. And how he played with the Caesar and whatever else. But again, it's kind of the elements of the swarm deck. But Yix was the real thing. This was pure swarm when it happened. Okay, and to kind of emphasize that, I've done a bit of a deployment strategy of how the game might develop. So on the left here we have the Davian Swarm, and on the right we have, I'm calling it Boom Wolf. It was Wolf Hunter, whatever you want to call it. It was the early decks, probably not Boom Wolf, okay, in name. But when you look at it, it starts, let's just say, just go with the Davian deck going first. It starts with an assembly. It only has 1 deployment. The next turn it probably goes tactics, and then one of a Centurion, a Jaeger, or a Hatchet Man. Okay, so there's 18 choices there. They're all 2 cost, and there are 18 of them in the deck, which is pretty reliable. So going first, it's practically always going to get a unit out on turn 2. If it's A and T, you could even put a Whitworth out, you could put a Mongoose out. It's not efficient to do so because you have 2 resources on the table and you're putting a 1 cost unit out. So the most efficient bang for your buck is to put a 2 cost out. Okay, so there you go. But all of a sudden, the minimum damage on the table is 2. From the Centurion, the Jaeger does 3, the Hatcheman does 2. So the minimum is 2. The maximum is potentially 4 if you alpha the Centurion or you alpha the Jaeger. The Hatchet Man you can overheat for a 3rd damage. So the damage output starts to escalate quite quickly. If you then put an assembly out and go for a 3-cost Wolfhound, there's only 4 in the deck. It's a little unlikely. It's more likely to be another one of these. But all of a sudden, you've put another... You've doubled this above, or you've added 3 to it. It's probably safe to say that you'll get a Centurion and a Jaeger, or a Hatchet and a Jaeger, or a Wolfhound in there. So all of a sudden, the minimum damage on the table is 5. And the maximum damage is a magic 7. And we'll revisit the rule of 7's that I wrote a few years ago in a bit. Okay, so this ramps really quickly when it comes to the available damage on table. Okay, you can't attack with it straight away, but it's what's on board. Otherwise, everything just gets delayed a turn. You've got to factor stuff in. So 7 damage available on turn 3 is pretty good going, and it just keeps going. Maybe it puts the tactics out next turn and you get a 3-cost, or you put another 2-cost and one of the 1-cost units out, and the ramp of units and damage goes up very, very sharply. And when you look at 4 draws, 4 double, well, ignore the first draw and then you add 4 more draws. So 5 card start, 1 draw, just ignore it, first turn. If you look after 4 more turns after that, so on turn 5, there are, on average, 2 1-cost units on the table, 3 2-cost units on the table, a 3-cost unit on the table, 3 resources and a mission. And all of a sudden, that's pretty reliable from this group of units. So you're always going to have a great start. you know. Okay, let's compare this to the Boom Wolf, which goes second. Okay, and I've very generously here gone A and Dasher Prime because there's only 5 Dasher Primes in the deck, and you really shouldn't guarantee seeing one of those until card 12, which is 5 star and 7 draws. So you're probably looking at turn 4. So I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. A and Dasher Prime, T and a Fenris A, which isn't on the table at that point. You build it, and then you probably have to play A and M or a Fenris Prime. It's messy going second. There isn't a natural curve that you see from the Swarm. Okay, and your first unit, okay, maybe Dasher Prime is great, and I've altered these numbers, but if you don't do that and you end up with Fenris before the Dasher, then your minimum damage on board is 2, your maximum damage on board is 3 from the Dasher. And if you compare that to the Centurion or the Jägermechs or the Hatchimans, that's about the same. But this is where it takes a turn for scariness. Okay, your next unit is probably only going to give you another 2, maybe 3 damage. Maybe that should be a 5. Maybe that should be a 5. Probably should be a 5 because Dasher and Fenris 2 and 3. So and then all of a sudden you're into Fenris Prime. So this becomes an 8 and an 8. And all of a sudden you've got a 2-5-8. Okay, it's a nice ramp up. But when you look at the same stage with Yik, 5 and 7, the Magic 7, 5 and 5. When you go to the 4th turn, this goes to 10 and 14. This is still at 8. And all of a sudden, when we add the Fenris B, that goes to 12 and 12. So there is a damage lag on board from the Wolf deck. It cannot keep up because its units are more expensive. Okay, they do more damage, but what you find with the Inner Sphere decks is there's less damage, but there's lots of options. Okay, and if we try and turn this the other way, then A and T Dasher, okay, that's a good start. Probably M and Fenris A, or if it's not an M, it's another resource. And you probably in the deck, when you look at it, when we look at this Wolf deck, let's go find this Wolf deck. When we look at this Wolf deck, you will see that there are only 4 munitions. Okay, and you're playing with 6 Fenris Primes. So what you probably have to, the assumption that I had to make here is that you are hoping to get a Fenris A early and get that out because it has no resource buyouts. And you probably have to accept that you are paying 4 for a Fenris Prime, because the chances are that you haven't got one of A, M or T. Fenris A doesn't matter. So if your resource draws are okay, you're only down to the variance of what might be there. And to that extent, you probably have to consider this to be a 4-cost mech, 4-cost unit, okay, in your development curve, because you haven't got enough munitions. If you get them all, that's great, but it's probably coming out on the same turn, whether you are playing with the munitions on the table or paying the buyout. So when you think about it, this is a 2-cost, this is a 3-cost, this is a 4-cost, this is a 5-cost, and then you've got your Man of War Primes for some beef. Okay, so that's probably how you have to figure the deck. So with that going first, you go Dasher, Fenris A, Fenris Prime, Fenris B, probably. And again, you're into the same curve and the same problems, whereas over on the Inner Sphere side and Yik side, he's probably going A and Mongoose, which is going to stop the Dasher straight off. Then he's going to go T with a bit of luck, or another A, and then one of Centurion, Jägermech, Hatchetman. Fenris A doesn't dash, this comes out, and you're on a similar curve. That Mongoose could actually be a Whitworth. which is why the max damage is 3. Because if it's a Whitworth, it's a 1/5/1 overheat 2+2, so you can get 3 damage out of it. And to be honest, if you attack and he blocks with a dasher, and you overheat the Whitworth for 2 to itself to kill the dasher, you've paid 1 for it, and he's paid 2, and you're playing a swarm. You're probably very happy with that. That's probably a good situation for you. So you've already got the upper hand. Yeah, he might hit you for 3, but then you hit him back for 3, and then the Fenris A comes out, and the Centurion Jägermech or Hachimen comes out, and you're in a similar position. Do you hit him for 3, or do you take 3? Knowing that his next turn is probably going to be Wolfhound or Whitworth or a 2-cost, any of those 2 costs. And once you've got 3 on the table, you're probably going to put 2 units out, and the curve goes through the roof. So this is what Peter saw, the ramp up in units and the available damage. You couldn't keep up with it, not as a Wolf Hunter player anyway. And this is where we can now look at some of the potential early game. And I've kind of got this set up a little. Okay, so let's just go down that route. Let's just look at what happens early. Okay, so for 3 cost on the table, you can have a Whitworth and a Centurion. So I've paid 3. I've got Centurion and Whitworth as Yick. Peter has got a Fenris A. Okay. So the strategy here from the Swarm player is to put the pressure on. Okay. Now, I have 3 damage potential on the Whitworth. I have 4 damage potential on the Centurion. Let me just pull this out. Whitworth 1/5/1 overheat 2+2. Centurion 1/6/2 alpha 2. Okay. The Fenris A is a 1/6/2. Okay. So if these are on the table, regardless, and I'm going to attack, I'm going to attack with both of them. Okay. And he's either going to block or he's not going to block. Now I know if he blocks, he could do 2 damage to something. He's probably going to do 2 damage to the Whitworth, because he knows what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is the Whitworth is going to overheat for 2, giving 3, and the Centurion is going to alpha for 4, and the 7, the magic 7, is going to kill the Fenris A. So he's going to put 1 damage on here, so that takes 1 damage. It takes 2 more damage from the overheat. Overheat 2, so it takes 4 in total. It's got 1 armor. We don't even kill this, and this this alpha strikes. He hasn't got a dash. If he's got a dash mech, he can come and kill this. That's fine. I don't mind. I'll overheat that and trade dasher for Whitworth any time of the day. If he attacks the Centurion, then it deals no damage, but you're only doing 3 damage to it, and it's a 1/6, so you're going to put 2 damage counters on it. So even if he dashes a unit, and the Dasher Prime at the time is the only fast unit, I'm pretty safe with this being alpha struck. Okay, so the let's untap. Let's turn that over, and let's clear that. So the Fenris A is not a great unit at the start. Let's look at the follow-up. It's a Fenris B. So let's just say I've now got 7 units. This is 7 resources. You know what we said about that. So I've got 7. So all of a sudden I can add let's just add a hatchet man. Okay. Put the mongoose out of the way. So I do the same thing. I attack with all of these. So I send these over, and here we go. Now, I have 2 and 3. I have 5 damage that I can send back. Or I can take all of this. And this is potentially 3, 7, 10 damage. Now in a 40 card game, that's 25% of your health. That's a big hit. So the chances are I probably have to block it. Now if I've got a Fenris Prime and a Fenris A on the table, how do I block this? Okay. I've only got 5 damage. I can put 5 damage on the Whitworth, which doesn't kill it. I can put 5 damage on the Centurion. That doesn't kill it. And I can put 5 damage on the Hatchet Man. That doesn't kill it. So, what do? I could put 5 damage on the Whitworth, hoping that he overheats. And my problem here is I've got 1, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So if I put it on the Whitworth and hope that the Whitworth uses its overheat option and kills itself, then what happens is the Centurion Alpha strikes. This does 1. This does another 3 and overheats. So that's 4, 5, 6. Sorry, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I kill the Fenris Prime. Okay. If he thinks I'll allocate it to the Centurion because the Centurion is going to Alpha Strike, I can put 5 damage on it, and then next turn I've got a Dasher in my hand, it's got 5 damage on it. I can kill it off for free because it's alphaed and it won't return damage. Then what happens is you put 5 damage on it, the Centurion does an Alpha Strike, you overheat the Whitworth for 3, the Centurion does 2, and this does 2. You kill the Fenris Prime because it's the most damaged unit. So that doesn't work. And then you've got 2 and 3, so you put 5 on the Hatchet Man. So this is going to take 5. I can still overheat it if I want. I can overheat this for 3, do 2 with that, so that's 5. 6, 7 with this. I don't even need to do this. I kill the Fenris Prime. So if you block in this situation, there are so many options on board here. One of these is going to die, most likely the Fenris Prime because it deals the most damage, and you're going to kill nothing. Splatting the damage around makes no sense because you make best use of the armour. You cannot kill anything. Now, if you've got a mission, and Peter was pushing the envelope, he was packing good shooting, things are slightly different. But 5 damage with a good shooting on that does 7. I'm attacking, you allocate first. If you allocate it to the Centurion, I'm going to alpha it. So get 4 and then use the other options. I could get 4, 7, 8, 9 out of this. I might hold back my Whitworth damage on that and kill the Fenris Prime. And you've played a card from your hand. You've played a mission to kill my unit. And I've killed your Fenris Prime. Okay. If you then go and kill the other units, my training still follows. I get 3 out of this. If you assign it to the Hatchet Man, I'm going to do 3 on here. I've got 2 more there, and I'm going to overheat this and kill the Fenris Prime. If you allocate it to the Whitworth to kill the Whitworth, then I'm going to overheat that and then that because I have initiative. I know what's going on. So playing a mission in order to kill one of these seems like a good idea, but you've wasted a mission card effectively. The Fenris Prime is going to die one way or the other, and I've traded a Fenris Prime, which I've probably paid 4 for, and a good shooting, one of my most valuable mission cards, to kill a Whitworth. Woo. Or to kill a Centurion, 2 cost unit. Or to kill a Hatchet Man, 2 cost unit. Okay. And the situation gets worse, because if you sub out any of these for the Jaeger mech, the situation is practically the same. If you sub out any of these for a Mongoose, the situation is probably the same. This is probably the best situation for the clan player. You attack with these 3. They say, oh, 2 and 3 makes 5. I'll allocate 5 damage to the mongoose, because allocating 1 against this armor is just going to bounce. So, whoopee-doo. I've managed to kill a mongoose and waste 1 damage. And what happens? 2, 4, another 6 there, and I overheat. I kill the Fenris Prime. I've traded my mongoose for a Fenris Prime. Okay, 1 cost for 3 cost. You have 1 unit on the table. I have 2. I'm playing a swarm. I have lots of units coming out. You're in trouble. Okay. So, obviously, training the mongoose has the downside of losing a fast unit. And the only way to deal with this is to hunt. But the thing here is that Yik's damage curve is that big that about turn 3 or turn 4, this situation is always going to arise. You are going to be in a position, unless you get acid screwed. You know, screws happen, fine. Or mech screwed, even possible as well. Okay, possibly not with 34 in the deck, but you get the idea. So, around turn 3, turn 4, there are going to be 3 or 4 units on the table. He's going to attack and you're going to be forced to be defend. Okay, and with 3 or 4 units on the table and that many options, the chances are you are probably going to take somewhere between 7 and 10 or 11 damage. 25% hit. And you're in trouble at that point, because you've only got 1, 2 units on the table. If you block, you're going to die. So how did Peter deal with this? And actually, I should go back to my spreadsheet for a second, because this is revisiting the rules of 7. And the rules of 7 is an article I wrote and put on Alpha Strike a number of years ago, and basically it compared Fenrises. This was the Fenris A. Actually, we can put this in place. This was the A, and this was the D, and this was the Prime, and this was the B. Okie dokie. Let's just put those in there. Let's just make those. Okay, so here are our Fenrises, actually. Let's put that in. Okay, so the A does 2 damage, the D does 5 damage. And what I was doing at the time was comparing the combinations of the two. If you need one damage from somewhere, kill something, whatever else, you can use a 2 damage Fenris A. If you need 2 damage, you can use the same 2 damage Fenris A to cover the 2 damage slot. As soon as you get to 3, all of a sudden you actually need 2 units. You need 2 Fenris A's to get to a 3, or you need your 1 5 cost and you are wasting that damage. My point is, it's inefficient. Okay. Once we get to 4 cost, you need those 2 Fenris A's again, or the Fenris D, and you're wasting a damage. If we get to 5 cost, it goes to 3 Fenris A's. 3 lots of 2 make 6, or the Fenris D. And once we get to 6, you need 3 Fenris A's, or a D and an A, which is what you need for 7. And this is very inflexible, because let's just say it's turn 3 or turn 4, having 2 Fenris A's on the table requires you to draw them, and the average draw in that amount of time is 1. Okay. So the point with the rule of 7's is to actually look at the combinations with 3 and 4 versus 2 and 5. Now 3 and 4 is a lot more flexible because of the way it works, because the 3 damage unit will cover the 1, 2 and 3 damage required, and all of a sudden we need let me just put these in so it's right. So to do 4 damage we can use 2 3 cost unit, 3 damage, sorry. To do 4 damage, 2 units that deal 3 covers our base, or our single unit that deals 4. So that's quite nice. 5, we can do our 2 3 damages again, or you can do a 4 and a 3. 6, 2 3 damages, or a 4 and a 3. 7, you want a 3 and a 4. Okay, and then it works upwards. Okay, so this is a lot more flexible because the requirement to have 2 units that deal the same damage is later in the game, or that it occurs later in the game. Now, when you look at Yix, where he's got 1, 2, and 3 cost units, this is exacerbated even more. Because to do a 1 cost, 1 damage, 1 damage unit, that's the Whitworth. You can then use 2 of those if you want to do 2 damage, or you just use a 2 damage unit like a Mongoose. To get to 3, you can use a Whitworth and a Mongoose, or you can use a Jägermech or an Overheating Hatchet Man or a Wolfhound. Yeah, super complicated. Okay, to deal 4 damage, you can use, well, you could use 4 Whitworths effectively, a little extreme, but you could use a single Centurion, you could use a Hatchet Man and a Whitworth. There are lots of combinations. And this is my point with the 1, 2, 3 over the 3 and 4. When you look at this, effectively the 4 slot is 2 2s. But when you look at the 4 slot here, it's not only 2 2s, but it can be a 1 and a 3. So all of a sudden, when you're playing with lots of units, the number of combinations goes up and the number of variations goes up. It's probably a little too complicated to calculate because this isn't the raw normal damage. And you'll see that in Peter's deck. These units just do what's listed on the card. This does 2, this does 3, this does 3, that does 4. There are no options. The combinations are very, very limited. Whereas the Mongoose, okay, fine, that's in the same vein, it's a 1, 1, 3, 2. The Whitworth, I can do 1 damage with it, I can do 3 damage with it. The Centurion, I can do 2 damage with it, I can do 4 damage with it. The Hatchet Man, I can do 2 damage with it, I can do 3 damage with it. If you've got a slow mech, I can get 4 damage out of it because it's got a hatchet. With the Jägermech, I can do 3 damage and another one. And with the Wolfhound, I can do 3 damage and another one even more. So I can make that 4. There are so many permutations and combinations in here that requiring you to hit 7 to kill a Fenris, or 8 to kill something else, or 9 or 6 or 5 or whatever else, you're spoilt for choice. Literally spoilt for choice. And that's one of the reasons why this deck just absolutely slaughtered things. Shu Yagao, if I remember rightly, is a professor in mathematics. Way above my mathematical capabilities and probability and other sort of stuff. So picking out which is the most efficient combination of this lot to kill one of these. And that's the whole point with a swarm. You sail your slow mechs across with a view that if he blocks, you're going to kill something. You always make him make the decision. If he blocks, you kill something and you trade. And because your units are so cheap and you can throw them out and you've got so many of them, trading is in your advantage. Okay. Especially when it's a 1-for-1 trade. Even a 2-for-1 trade for the right unit is probably of benefit to you. Okay. So, Peter, and let me just flip over to the dummy where I have the other cards. There's the other unit. Okay, so 2 cost, 2 damage, not great. 3 cost, useful. 2 of these is the same as 1 of those to get the magic 7, which is what you need to kill one of these. You can hunt with a couple of Fenrises and take out a Wolfhound, yes, successfully, but it's probably too late at that point. Because you can kill 1 unit, but you know there's going to be 5 coming at your stockpile doing 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. Probably not 5 damage, but 1, 2, 3 or 4 damage in varying combinations, as we've seen. So that makes things rather complicated. So how did Peter win? Well, the weakness of this deck is actually that everything does 2 or 3 damage. It has to use its options to increase those. And that's fine when you're trading. But Peter used, and I'll just spawn it, he used Heavy Fog. And Heavy Fog, and we've discussed this in the past, is not symmetrical. Attacking mechs get -2 attack and receive 2 less damage. So he wouldn't block. So when Yick said, oh, I'm attacking with this lot, this Mongoose, this Centurion, this Hatchet Man, Peter would say, okay, fine, let it through, play Heavy Fog. So this does no damage, this does no damage, this does no damage. -2. Okay. You can overheat the Hatchet Man for 1. Pretty fair, it's going to bounce off the armour. You can alpha the Centurion for 2. But that's probably not worth it. Because if I alpha it, I'm not going to attack with it next turn. And I can do 2 damage next turn. And then if I need 4 damage, I can alpha it when I need to. Especially when it comes to alphaing it for 4 to kill one of these in combination with one of my other units. Okay, and the same goes for the Jaeger. You can alpha it for 4. Maybe here it's doing 1 damage. So instead of doing, let's just say this lot came across. Say you're doing 2, 6, 8. You're doing 8 to 10. If it blocks, which is going to kill a Fenris. Okay, you let them through, you play your Heavy Fog, this goes down to 1. You're probably not going to alpha it because it can get picked off next turn, and let's face it, next turn it can attack for 3, so alphaing it for an additional 1 doesn't really help much. If you look at that statistic, attack on its own, 3, attack next turn, 3, attack next turn, 3, 9. I can alpha it to do 4, then I can reload it and then untap it. So I can do 4 now or 9 over 3 turns, which is best. That's the way to look at Alpha Strike. So 2 goes down, that does 1, that does 1 with overheat. So I'm now taking 2 damage instead of 11. Okay. So that's how Peter managed to survive that, by waiting for that big hit that's going to come across and kill one of these units. He said, you know what, I'm not going to trade, I'm going to play a Heavy Fog, you're going to do a lot less damage. And then what I can then do with my Fenris A good shooting Fenris Prime, or my Fenris Prime and my Fenris B, or my Man of War, or my Fenris Man of War and Dasher, or even Fenris and Pushing the Envelope, or even Man of War Pushing the Envelope, where the pushing the envelope bounces off the armour, is kill one of your resources. Which means next turn you probably have to deploy a resource if you've got one. If you haven't got one, you're in trouble. Or not actually put 2 units down. And that's the way to slow things down. That's how he beat the Swarm. By letting them through, reducing the damage, and then killing off the resources so that the Swarm couldn't put 2 units out a turn. As we've seen from the deployment strategies over here, the Wolf basically puts a resource and a mech each turn. Whereas the Inner Sphere, I've got to change the labels over here. The Inner Sphere Swarm, probably better to choose this one, puts out a couple of resources and then starts chucking them out left, right and centre. So when you're going resource and unit, resource and unit, resource and unit against the Hunter Wolf, the chances are you're going to get to a point where you got a few hits in, but he's going to start to get board presence, and his units are arguably higher value. You know, if you are attacking with I don't know, let's just say these 2, which is 4 or 5 damage, and you put a Man of War and Prime in front of it, it's going to take damage and deal it back, and it's not going to. The Man of War is going to survive, and then you can use the speed of the fasts to either hunt or reduce the resources. So that's why Peter won. He won because of Heavy Fog. He could see what and the intel that happened the day before about what was going on with this unit. Yeah. So that's what happened. That's how he managed to beat it. And that's how he managed to beat not Yick's deck, because I don't think he played it. I think Yick played Terry. And the one thing about this Swarm deck is he was really, really bad against the Bearer. Bearer decks he was really, really bad against. But when you look at the other decks that were being played, let's look at Ralph Anderson's, you can see it. The Mongoose, the Whitworth, the Centurion. You know, they all go through. They're slower because they're running things like Black Knights and other stuff. Where's Baron? Mike Fitzgerald is the other one. Similar. So they're running similar kind of stuff, and the Heavy Fog works well against these. When they come across with Mongoose, Wolfhound, and Centurion, then all of a sudden you just let them through, play the Fog, and do no damage, and that gives you the jump, because all of a sudden you aren't 10 cards behind. You are effectively 10 cards ahead. So he knew that the Wolf Hunter deck was good against this, which is arguably the start of the Star League pilot. Note here that there is no way to put Kai in for free. You pay 5 for Kai, and these people were happy to pay 5 for Kai because he's that damn good. Even the basic Kai, let alone Champion of Solaris, which is just ridiculous. So he could beat this. He could beat the Bearer deck, and he had a plan to beat the Swarm deck, and that's why he won. If you look at the Rick was second with a Wolf deck, you'll see that the sideboard is Temporary Ceasefire, which is similar. You block and play Temporary Ceasefire, which is how I played it in the UK Nationals in '98. I probably should have played Heavy Fog. Actually, I'd probably have lost if I'd have played Heavy Fog. But the Temporary Ceasefire is a somewhat similar thing. You block and then you play Temporary Ceasefire. They do no damage. The advantage of Heavy Fog is you don't have to block, okay, but you take a couple of damage, but it's reliable. And then also possibly something like a Berserker Warrior where everything gets +2 or whatever else, and you put it on a Man of War or something rather than a medium speed. It can block most of those, and it's hard to kill. Unfortunately, this strategy is not quite as strong, but you know, that's the way it goes. So Peter could beat this. He had faster units. His units were slightly smaller. The Ullars do good damage, but they don't last as long. They're not as durable. And the Fenris D is kind of outclassed by the Fenris B, really, in that respect. So Peter won. He recognised the weakness in the Swarm deck and countered it and played a deck that could do reasonably well against the majority of the other decks there. Okay, and if you listen to the recounting of it, what he said basically, when he played Terry, he won the first match, where he opened with Dasher Prime Superior Nav, which is the dream start, even though he'd only run 5 Dasher Primes, which is, yeah, a little on the lean side from that respect. And you can see, or we'll look at how that developed in the future. So after this, there is an article in Julie's magazine, which I can't find. I know it's there, I've seen it, I've got a copy of it somewhere, I've probably got to go hunt through it. But basically it said, this is the world's best deck. And anybody that read it was brilliant. And was it the world's best deck? No, it was not the world's best deck. It was a good deck that would win against most archetypes and absolutely sideboarded against the thing it couldn't beat with Heavy Fog. And everyone's looking at Heavy Fog. Is it really that good? Why is it in the sideboard? I don't understand. Because nobody had really seen the full-on swarm that Yick had produced. So, you know, I remember doing it. I'm not sure if I've got the magazine here or not. No, I haven't. Is it this one? Going out and buying this. Going out and buying this because it had the World Championship deck in it, which was great. Is it here? Is that on the Comstar article? Yeah. I've got it. I've scanned it. I'll pull it in. So this is kind of where the meta was going after that. So Peter's deck was great. Don't get me wrong, it was a great bit of design and the sideboard helped him win. Was it the world's best deck? No. If you bought that and played it and didn't know how to play it, i.e. the equivalent of net decking, which I think is good for analysis and looking at, but when people don't know how to play the deck, it doesn't work. And you can see that if you go and watch the Travis versus Engelbury match, then that's how not to how to play a World Championship deck, because you've net decked it and you don't know how to play it. So everyone thought, oh yeah, if I got this deck I'll win. Brilliant, I'll play every game and I'll win. No, wrong. It was a good deck that was teched to deal with an issue that he saw, and a lot of people hadn't even seen swarms. They weren't coming around and they weren't available and whatever else. So a little bit more from the files of history. First of all, Duelist 16 has a Battletech playmat. Wow. What have we got? Scrap heap, stockpile, command area, tapped mech on patrol. And what I love here is this is where you put your tapped mechs that are patrolling. No, never happens like that. What's this? Mechs guarding stockpile? Yes. Command post and building stuff and whatever else. If this was designed to be played on, then it was pretty poor. Pretty poor. What you want now is a big piece of neoprene. Don't bother with anything, because that pencils everything fitting into holes and it doesn't work, and you get more mechs than you've got holes. The only thing you could say is, I'll have something for my stockpile and my scrap heap, and maybe a big lozenge for command and a big lozenge for control reaches. Don't do these as individual guards. It doesn't work. Okay. Here's the next bit that came after Worlds. Look, Mercenaries. The Mercenary expansion came out, and this was announced in August 1997. Yeah, and when we look in here, yes, they'll be in the next Duelist. Fine. So here is the next Duelist, and there's a few bits in here I want to point out. So I do love this. I think this is a great picture. Hearts of Iron, Balls of Steel, Mercenaries. If only it was that good an expansion. And we'll have a look in a second. So going down here, and this is another little bit that a lot of people don't realise. The Battletech hired guns context. Okay. Prepare mercenaries for second expansion. As a captain of your own team, your mission is to sign up the largest group of Battletech players you can for a chance to win terrific prizes. The captain of the largest unit wins a grand prize, a trip to Seattle with three guests, for the opportunity to clash with members of Wizards of the Coast design team. Fields of combat include Battletech and the simulator pods at the Wizard Center, which was really good. The contest will be launched at Gen Con, Milwaukee, and the pre-release will run through to the 12th of September. Winners will be announced early October. Check your local game store. So this was basically an idea to get people together and play. And Wizards hadn't worked out about the internet, because there was a very smart guy called Dan Stahl who created a website called alphastrike.com and then got everybody on alphastrike.com to sign up to this because you basically put his name into a little form on the internet and it came through and it registered against him, because you had to list all the names of all the people. So everyone was like putting all their friends on there, and the guy down the road and a friend of a friend kind of thing, and get to 10. He used his website and got to thousands. Okay, it's not quite true, it's more like a couple of hundred. And everyone was saying, you don't know all these people. And he said, yes, but I've got contacts with them and I've played with them, and then this is wherever else. And then they said, but you use the internet. And he said, oh, no, you don't. There was no stipulation on that. It's just the number of people to sign up. And in the end, they gave him the winner. And this is why Dan Starr was called the Hired Gun, because this was the name of the competition, and he won it. He won it with everybody's name off Alpha Strike. And Alpha Strike at the time was really fledgling, and it was a few places that people posted. So after things like Duelist Magazine were coming out, Alpha Strike was probably the place where all the cool people who knew what was going on went. Duelist was out there, and as we've seen and will see, he's really, really bad. Spam the page down button. Hearts of Iron, Balls of Steel. Dan, you're the man. Here we go. Here's a very, very nice Axeman. I do. Oops. 327 kills, but who's counting? This is just a tournament ad. Magic and Magic. And then down here we have, if we can find it, because let's face it, it's a Magic magazine, so all of this comes in really, really late. Somewhere here. In the back of the damn magazine. Here's the Mercenaries article, more bang for your buck, which talks about mercenaries and what it's bringing in and paying the cost to be the boss. This is all about mercenaries. It's a nice interview, which is worth a read there if you want. They've picked this Last Stand at Hanover thing, based on the card itself. And here is their suggested deck, designed by Charlie Catapult. I'm not quite convinced about Charlie Catapult. Charlie Cantino, probably. 1 black market, 1 Comstar support, 3 mercenary relations divisions, 3 outreach training, assembly politics, tactics, think tank, blackjack, black knight, centurion, hatchetman, Jaegermeister, Lancelot, mongoose, stealth. It's a 2 cost. It's got a munitions buyout. It's a 2A, 2M. Where are we? Come on. Stealth. It's even worse. It's 3, 2A, 2M. They got them in the deck. Jesus, what's going on here? That's P&T. Comstar support for munitions. Horrible. And then contract with Blackthorns, Erendani, Grey Death, Calhounds, Northwind, Snords, Centurion Lancers, Rhonda Snord herself, and Sharilar Murray. Who the hell is going to put this together? One, all of that, most of those are rare. And how are you going to pay for it? Paying for Black Knights and other stuff. Which planet are you on? Which planet are you on? And here is the examples of some of the bits coming down, and Comstar being a house all of a sudden, and what's going on, and a bit of history and stuff. And then you got your card lists. So that takes us up to the end of the World Championship. Mercenaries is about to be released. Why Peter won? Okay. And the origins of the decks. So next time I'm going to look at the expansions. I'm going to look at Mercenaries, and I'll look at how that changed some of that meta and what that brought. I'm going to do Mech Warrior, and I'm going to do Arsenal, all before we get on to the Worlds 1998. Each time I'm going to try and look at how this developed, some of the core themes of the decks, how the meta expanded, but also where some of the other decks came through, because it isn't just, the meta isn't just good old Inner Sphere Swarm versus fast hunting, booming clan stuff. There's lots of other options out there. There's Sandhurst, there's Mechless, there's Davian Pilot, and you know all of these are Inner Sphere mainly and not much clan. Clan Big Mech turns up later. So we're going to have a look at that next time. But until next time, I shall hope that you can or I wish you a heart of iron and balls of steel. I had to. No, I look after yourselves. It's a big bad world out there. And yeah, next time we'll carry on and look at the next bits in the great history and development of Battletech CCG. See you soon. Take care.